Welcome to a Dram with Friends, where I am extremely excited. It's not often you get to meet and welcome one of your childhood heroes into the pub to join you, but I am so blessed to have John Helton uh, join me today in the pub. Welcome, John.
Thank you, Sean.
And I had asked you if you were here what I'd be pouring, and you said Middleton Very Rare. There's a bottle I don't have, but I did pull out the Glendalough. Uh, this is a special one where they're aged in Irish barrels, and like it's even got bottle number 421, cask number 2, batch number 2 from tree number 11A. So I'll have a little bit of that. I really like the Glendalough line, and it's got my buddy St. Kevin on the front. So
There you go.
so
Well,
for
I'll
the
I'll say this. I only know that that was my first time when we were in Ireland a number of years ago, and when that Middleton's was brought out and recommended we try it, I tried and I liked it. So it's all good.
there you go. Well, I'm hoping to try it someday myself. And Ireland is definitely on my bucket list. Some family history there, and I want to get there, but with 8 kids and one income, I have to be choosy as to where I go. And right
Yeah,
now, it's visiting grandkids because a bunch of mine have moved away. So that's
fantastic.
where a lot of our travel dollars go.
Well, that grandkids come first.
Yeah. So, John, for those that don't know who John Helton is, who's John Helton?
Who is John Helton?
Yeah.
That's a hard question. It took me probably about 60 years to find out. Um, I think, Sean, it's a blessing and a curse to have the family that I had because my father would never turn anybody away from the house if they needed a meal or a place to stay. And so we were taught kindness to anyone who came. And I had friends from every walk of life. And oftentimes, when we were out playing and it was time to eat, some kids would have to go home. And my dad said, come on in here and have something to eat. And you just have to make your table a little bit smaller or your seats a little bit tighter. And I know that my early years were always kind of like this Walt Disney character that had the Satan on one shoulder and and God on the other, the angel. And it was always a fight to which one was going to win because I think I was very rebellious and probably thought I knew better, maybe at that time, my folks. And I was probably in my double digits, maybe early 10, 12. But over the years, I didn't uh, I didn't really mature like I would have loved to. Um, I needed glasses, and I got my first glasses when I was in grade 8. And when I got to Calgary in '69, I was being fitted for some contacts again because I had them in university when I was a running back and a tight end until my last year I played either linebacker or defensive end, defensive tackle, whatever they needed. So, anyways, saying all this to say that I was kind of growing up, as my doctor told me, with a discrepancy, or I was, what's the word I'll use? I'll not say handicapped, but let's just say the bottom line is maybe I didn't see things clearly from a lot of ways in life because of my my vision. As I've aged now, vision and hearing have become more impaired, and so I really have to pay attention. But saying all that, Sean, to try to illustrate how in the early years when you couldn't see truth, and in the later years when you have a family to look at after and do all the things that that requires, and then you're also involved with being your own self, be it detrimental or be it enhancing to your life. I finally come to realize that. I think the important thing is to have our eyes open, which I think I definitely do now in life. I can see more clearly what's detrimental and is not going to have a good future for myself or those I care about. And I don't really go through the world anymore thinking, well, why would anybody have anything against me? I didn't do anything to anybody. And that's not a good way of looking at it because people find their own reasons for how they act and carry on their lives. So it's taken me a while to come to realize that everybody who smiles at me isn't my friend. So, in university, I heard this saying once, and it says that when the wolf shows his teeth, he isn't smiling. And I probably allowed that to be too much of an early um, have an impression on my life because, as I say again, I didn't truly become me until now. I can say what I think, and if I don't like what's going on, and I don't have to be a part of any group or anybody, and I'm me, and if you don't like what you see, I always say just don't touch me, and we'll be fine. So now I'm maybe at this late 70s cranky stage of life where Um, maybe I should have been like that when I was 18 because I did care then and I don't care now. So
There
so
you
that
go.
that's who I am now. I care about people, I care about what's going on in the world, but I only care about the things that I can literally put my hand on and change because if there's 7 to 9 trillion people in the world, I have enough trouble with my own self. So,
Well,
I try to
it,
just be a decent human being and I don't say I would do others as I would do unto me because um, I think everybody's got to make that own choice. I'll just not be a problem in anybody's life, and so that's who I think I become. I don't have to please anybody. I don't have to be who I'm not, and I can just live a life that when I lay down at night, I'm glad for my day. So
that,
so whatever you
that
got out of that in the midst of everything, now
well,
now I'm now I'm
there's a
finally
whole
being me
lot to
because
there's
I'm
a whole lot to unpack there because and that's one of the reasons I wanted to reach out and capture what I'm this season of my episode or Dram with Friends is I wanted to capture some of the wisdom. I did a talk at Mount Royal University to two classes earlier this week and explaining to them that I hope I picked up some wisdom along the way with the gray hair and the because I did 33 and a half years of policing here in Calgary. And so I did get to see some of those things. And if my research is correct, you grew up in Mount Union, is it?
yeah,
Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania.
And so I drove past there. I don't know how close I was. I drove from Niagara Falls and stayed in Cumberland one night and then went to Gettysburg. So I was in the neighborhood compared to
You
here.
were in the neighborhood when you were near uh, Gettysburg.
Okay.
My wife and I stayed at Gettysburg one night, and there was this Eisenhower Hotel, and we were the only people in the hotel, the only guests in the hotel. And so I wanted to stay up that night to just see if maybe Lincoln might have come through or somebody else, from the Civil War. But I ended up having a good sleep.
There you go. That's awesome. That's an awesome. Yeah, my wife and I were I was speaking in Eastern Canada and then we've got one of our kids, our oldest lives just outside of Atlanta, so we were driving down, gonna spend a little time in Myrtle Beach by ourselves, and then over to Atlanta area to visit our kids and
Yeah.
grandkids. So yeah, it's but you talked about some of the pressures as a young man of listening to the voices, and that's an area that I think is only compounded since you were a young athlete where you've got these young superstars are listening to not all the right voices. I know I was working with youth at risk with the Calgary Police Service, and one of the young men was a Sudanese boy that was phenomenal basketball player, but they all listen to the other young men that are teenagers that have no life experience as to what's best for them to guide them, right? So you
So
can see, and you look at some of the superstars that get in trouble just because they're not listening to the right voices. How 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 hard was that to navigate, and what advice do you give young
well,
athletes today for that?
it's I've been able to look back on my life, and I've had some good people. And I think that most of the guys that I'm going to say knew from the Stampeders that were there before me. I'll say, for example, Herman Harrison and Bob Luke. They were all at least 4 to 8 years older than me.
Okay.
And when you have fellows who have that span of experience, and I came from that very small town in Pennsylvania, and as I said, one of my misconceptions was that I wouldn't set out with premeditation to harm anybody. And I'm saying that I think a lot of times in life when you're young, guys are what I call like Eddie Haskell. You know who Eddie Haskell is? Are you old enough to know that?
The name rings a bell. I'm just trying to place the.
I'll not put you on the spot. Eddie Haskell was on Leave It to Beaver. And Eddie
Okay,
Haskell was
yeah.
always that guy who he would be really kind and nice and say all the most wonderful things. And he was just a sweet young man and the whole bit. But all the while, he was trying to get you in trouble, be it with your parents or with people on the street or whatever the case may be. So I'd say that I've met a lot of Eddie Haskells in my life. And until I found out who I was kind of listening to the Eddie Haskells. And I think that one of the most important things that young men need to do is to have the ability to discern when people do not have anything they desire from you except to help you. And a good buddy of mine, Willie Burden, uh, was, of course, in Calgary. And my sons were young then. And I said, Willie, anything can happen to any of us because his father had passed away when he was just a, a wee young man. And so his mother worked hard and he had brothers and sisters, but Willie was just the most wonderful guy you'd ever want to meet. Um, he was like all the rest of us. We all have our highs and lows. But the best thing about Willie was that I felt like, well, if something happened to me, I want my boys, being in Calgary, to know somebody like Willie Burden who would tell them the truth about life and help them to see what happens if you go this route or you go that route. And I don't think young men have that today because I believe, unfortunately, that money is the motivating factor for why people may choose to want to think they're going to help you and really don't help you. I think that from what I've seen over life, I think when you look at sports, sports is like horse racing. You've got to win the race to be able to make your, say, a horse's owner money to pay the jockey to pay for your food. And I think in sports it's the same thing. The owner is paying money, the coach is expecting you to win. um, Everybody on the team has an expectation of you. And I think the greatest expectation is to know what you have to offer and to know the value of yourself. And I think when young men don't know how to value themselves and they don't know what they don't know, which is redundant, but really, how can you possibly know something, really know it, and then sabotage your life by doing it? So I think that when I look at me today, physically, I am very, very good as I sit here at this moment because life is fleeting, but I'm very, very good physically. And more than ever, I'm good mentally because I've had the opportunity to live long enough to know the truth. And I think truth is not what I conceive it to be, not what the world says it is, but I think it's what a person can discern when you see something happening and someone's not there telling you, well, what you're saying is this and this and this, and this is how you should react to it. No, what you see, you're going to have something in you that's going to tell you this is not right. And if that something in you tells you that it is not right, it doesn't matter who's telling you, it is right. If it's not, it's not. So I think young men don't have that. I think young men have to, almost unfortunately, you have to go through the training camp of life like you go through the training camp of sports, and you have to see the truth of what's going on. And again, for me, it wouldn't matter if it were a young woman or a young man. I would love for there to be a means by which they could know truly their value as a human being, regardless of where in the world their parents came from or their grandparents and all that, but just so that they can have a value for themselves that would not be swayed over here for a few bucks or over here for someone that smells nice or whatever the case may be, and they could keep themselves at least like walking down a railroad track. You might step off, but you step right back on again to keep your journey. So young men don't have that, I don't think. I look at football. I see stupid things happening in a football game that well trained or athletes who are thinking wouldn't do. And I think that's the way it is for life for everyone. So that was a long way around to say I just feel that people don't know their value. And once they do, then I think it's kind of like something that's really important to them. They start looking after it.
And that's one of the reasons. Well, it's one of the main reasons we exist as heroic men. The charity itself is called God Squad Canada Society. Was four police officers saw what was happening to the young people we were arresting and the people we were dealing with when they didn't have that loving father at home to be that role model for especially young men, uh, to see, as I explained to the classes the other day, we've heard about toxic masculinity, but we've never heard about authentic masculinity and what that is, and that inner thing that you talk about, we would say is promptings of the Holy Spirit. Like, you know the difference between right and wrong. uh it's what you do with it, right? You can deaden that to the point where it doesn't affect you anymore, but you need there's ways to uh get back right. I would say right with God. So I don't know if you uh I think, did your daughter go to St. Francis is what I somebody was
My
telling
daughter
me.
did.
So what
My daughter went to St.
so
Francis, yes.
I was do you know what year she was there? Because I went there. Some of my kids went there. I coached rugby there for
Well,
years.
my daughter, she would be, let's see, she'd be 59, going on 60 this year.
Okay.
So,
Well, then
so
she
yeah,
would have
she'd have
been.
been there. Take that away, 18 years. Probably should have been there in 80, 83,
So she would have
80,
been there with
82,
my
83.
sister and my brother. I graduated in '82, so she would have been there right around the same time as me, and so probably know some of the same people. And my sister was a year behind me, and my brother was the year behind. It was my brother that was telling me that he thought your daughter went to St. Francis. So
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah,
and
the world's quite small, isn't it?
it is. And then I seem to recall. Did you belong to St. Pius Parish when
St.
you were
Pius,
there?
yeah. Yeah, we
Okay,
went to St. Pius and uh, for many years until we went to Winnipeg. And
okay.
and then then yeah, we went there before and after. So yeah, so that was
So
good.
a
And
couple of my board members for God Squad, Deacon Stephen Robinson, he's was a long time there, and Tim O'Connor, they were both longtime parishioners there at. So that's probably where I heard it from. So
Sure. Well, I'd say to you that the good thing is, like you're saying about Satan. I think that one of the very very unfortunate things in life is, and I've known it to be common to me, is that you can be, as I say, walking along on that perfect track and walking and you can see miles down the road, but till you get to those miles down the road, you can slip off and if you don't get back on real fast, then that's a little detour that's going to cost you a lot. It'll cost you your it'll cost you your joy of life, I think. And I think for me, when I look at young people, I believe that people are easy to say, "Oh well, nobody's perfect," and well, you're not the only one, or this happened to this person or happened to that person. And I know scripture says that there's nothing that's uncommon to man, that hasn't been before. But I'm one that I know, and I'll give you just a quick story. When I was a boy, about 17, my mother said something to me, and I sassed her. And when I sassed her, my father came immediately to tell your mother, you're sorry. And I said, Dad, I was on my way, because at the very moment those words came out of my mouth, I felt this very painful stab in my heart. And I knew that that was to say, don't do that again, boy. You'll be in trouble. And I wasn't concerned with my dad, but I was concerned with the fact that I couldn't take that back that I had said to my mother. It didn't matter that she loved me, it didn't matter that she cared, and it doesn't matter anything. It was mattered to me that I did it, and there was nothing that was going to fix that. So I can say all the sorries in the world, but I can't take my words back. So I tried very hard in my life to tell people how I felt and to try to give them a little idea of who I am that I knew of at that time, so that they would know if I kind of crossed my line or I heard something that I didn't like, then I wasn't going to have much to do with anybody. And to me, that's the hard part is I don't know how you excuse. I don't know how I don't know how an individual can excuse something that's wrong. I think you have to admit and acknowledge that it's wrong. It's wrong, and if you have a problem with it, get it fixed. But don't say, "Well, everybody does that," because I don't want to be everybody. I just want to be me. And if me isn't good enough, I'm okay with that, because I'm not going to have to live with anybody but me. So we were talking about young people and the peer pressure. I can remember back as a kid in our hometown, we used to have carnivals, and they'd have rides and this and that. And I had buddies, and we were all going to wear these motorcycle hats, which had the little short brim like a southern police cap,
mm-hmm.
And and they were saying, "Well, let's wear these or let's wear those." I said, "Okay," because I wasn't going to argue with them. So when I went to the store to get mine, I bought my own. I didn't have the same colors as everyone else. So, I wasn't going to be like the rest of the guys. So the only thing I ever felt like I was normal in being with other people was that if it was a football team, I had to wear the red and white or the blue and gold.
Yeah.
And if it was people, I had to be with people who I enjoyed and knew that they weren't looking at me for what I could give them. But if I wasn't good enough to be who I am, then that was okay. I love those kinds of things because I didn't have to waste my time. But I think the world is harsh because every commercial, and when you go on YouTube and you see all these things, and it's all about getting either a hit or making some money or doing something. All I know is after being married for 60 years, and my wife put up with me like you can't believe. So I wouldn't be married if it wasn't for her, most likely. And I'm grateful for my two sons. We lost our daughter 4 years ago,
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
but I've got a great, great, great granddaughter. She's a tremendous great granddaughter, and she reminds me. And I sent pictures. We're trying to clean out all of our stuff, At this time in life, I don't want to leave her with a mess,
Yeah.
any larger than it has to be. But anyways, I saw lots of pictures, and with our daughter, with our daughter, our granddaughter looks just like her daughter. So they've marked each other pretty well. But it's so neat, Sean, because you live and you learn, and I think that there's so many things that I would do differently in regards to um, my relationships with people, but there wouldn't be anything that I wouldn't do differently about with my wife and my kids and the good people I've met. I probably needed the salt and the pepper to see the difference, eh? So you might say. So now in life, I really I won't bother people. I don't. I tell people I don't need any more friends because I can't see all the ones that I have already that matter to me. So I don't need any more. You know, I just need to see the people that I care about more. And I think the beauty of life is I'm not wise by any means, but I just know myself now. And who I said earlier was bringing me all to who I am today. And quite honestly, you can see that I don't look that great, but I'm okay with
You look
what's happening on
fantastic.
the inside. Eh?
You're
So life
making
is cool. I'm grateful for. I'm really. I say this. I know all the way, even when I stepped in ditches, that God cleaned me up and got me going again. And I'm glad to be where I am today. I'd like to have gotten lesser 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 stains on me, but here I am, and I'm going to be mindful of that, and I'm going to remember that pain in my heart that happened probably 60 odd years ago, and so I won't forget those things, and that's what I think. Uh, when I die, it'll have been something on my mind was from yesterday, and yeah, we got that cleared up. Well, good. So away we go.
well, and that's where like we've been putting on men's conferences now for 29 years. Our 29th is coming up in March, and we always offer reconciliation or confession to the men because we all fall short. We all step in the mud, and
Oh yeah,
it's actually encouraging for men to see other men and that they're not alone in that when we fall down. I'll never forget our very first men's conference, and it's good, solid guys. We had about 200 show up at the very first one, and Steve Wood talked about the evils of pornography, and 200 of the 250 men lined up for confession right after that talk. Just it was so it's been very powerful in the testimonies we get back. I just interviewed a young man who went as a kid with his dad and just watching the men pray, and so you are a witness by learning as you have, and being married for 60 years. I can't think of a better witness for young men than to see somebody like yourself who back in when I was growing up was a superstar, right? Here in Calgary, and just that witness that, and I can concur about our wives holding things together. I'm married 41 years, and between
that's
working the
great.
rigs and working policing for 33 and a half years, she's definitely in the upper rankings for sainthood. So
You know the thing about men, and I tell my granddaughters, I'm really really fortunate. I've got five granddaughters and one grandson, and I always tell them, you're beautiful, you're smart, and you don't need a man to make your life better. And I tell them, you be you. And if someone can't appreciate who you are, and they can't see that if you love them, they're getting a real gem, then you let them go. You don't give your pearls to swines, eh? And so the bottom line is, I know all about this now. I knew about this way back when. I knew about this when this pain stabbed me in my heart for not being decent towards my mom at that occasion. I really feel like with the rest of my life that I had after that, that I tried to honor my mom and dad. I tried to honor people the best I was able to at that time. And when I went through life, I didn't, as I say, I didn't premeditate any harm to others. Sometimes things happened. I think on the football field, I never tried to hurt anybody, but people got hurt because that's like driving a stock car. You can you can wreck, eh?
Yeah.
And so I believe though that men cannot premeditate wrong and think it's right, or think it's okay, or
Yeah.
think it doesn't matter, or think I was young. Well, what I didn't know. You didn't know because I know when you do wrong, you'll get a pain in your heart. And if that's not telling you something, you know, then maybe everything that comes after that you deserve because you can't take the hint. And I've been hard headed at times, but I got the hint. I got the full repercussions other than God taking my life at that moment. But I know today, um, I'm just glad I've gotten to be who I am. Uh, Not great, but at least I'll tell you the honest truth about things. I always told people there was two things I really loved about my life, and that was that when I was in the insurance business, I never lied to anybody about any kind of product. I told them the truth, and I said, I think you need this. And I think if you don't buy it from me, you need to buy it from somebody, but you need it. So you need it. And with football, it was only me. There was nobody else out there to help me to do my job. It was just my own self. And whether I was sick or injured or whatever, when I was on the football field, I owed myself my best abilities to do what I could do. And if I fell short, it wasn't premeditated, it wasn't on purpose. So, I can live with that. But I think that anytime a person can sit and think and come up with a devious means to hurt another, um, that's not my kind of person. And and I've fallen short in my life, as I said. I just know that for a whole lot more years than not, I've tried to stay as close to I can with no premeditation of doing something wrong. And that doesn't clear the air for all the 70, almost 9 years that I've lived. But I'm glad to say I know I'm way further down the road than I was at one time. So I take gratitude towards God for that. So it's and I'll continue to learn too.
That's awesome. So I've got a couple buddies. Eugene Beliveau, he would have been after your time. He played 5 years for the Stamps as a defensive lineman. Him and I policed together for years. But Joe Forzani was a teammate of yours, and he's been a guest in our pub before. So do you have any good stories that I can give him a hard time about?
Well, I really think Joe was a grown man when he played football. That I think Joe didn't have to hear what was right or wrong. Joe didn't. Joe was just a good teammate, and I think Joe was a good man. I've always appreciated Joe. We've had some phenomenal good conversations about many things. Um, as I said, Willie Burden was a very good buddy, and just recently, unfortunately, I have a friend from Arizona State that passed away, and uh, as did Willie, of course, and as many of my Stampeder teammates have.
Yeah,
Um, I think the best when I look back is just the good way in which Willie Burden showed his humanity and I'm searching for a word, his how much he enjoyed life, I'll say, and enjoyed all of his teammates. He every 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 day he had come to practice, and we had this chalkboard, and he would put on a cartoon, and it was about anybody on the team who had who acted. He was so comical that he could write a little something about anybody, and a lot of times it was about, well, I won't go into all the teammates, but he would go into different things that he had known that they had gotten in trouble doing, or whatever the case may be. And that brought great hilarity to everybody. Even the coaches would come in and look at what's today's cartoon on who. And one of my good buddies was George Dunn. And George, he was the equipment manager with the Stampeders. And when my father drove up with me, I had taken my wife back to Pennsylvania from Arizona State, and then we drove to Calgary from Pennsylvania. A good friend that I had in college was a fellow by the name of Nello Tomarelli, and he rode with us. And my dad met George, and they got along together very well. And when we traveled back east, my dad and George would get together, and they'd go out in the evening and this and that. But Herm Harrison, Herm was um, well, he recruited me to Arizona State. In other words, they when you come on your scouting trips, you'd have someone to take you around and show you this and that and a whole bit. And Herm was the guy that did that. And then he was in Calgary, of course, and that's one of the kind of reasons why I came to Canada, is because I had played four positions in 4 years, and I had played them all well. And I was a seventh round draft choice of Buffalo, but and this is probably as comical as I can get on myself. As a kid, we had no air conditioning back in Pennsylvania. It was a 90 degrees and 90% humidity, and there was mosquitoes. And so when I was looking at where I was going to go, whether I went to uh, Calgary or Buffalo, I went to Calgary because I said, surely they don't have the mosquitoes like the East Coast does, which would be Pennsylvania and Buffalo and all that, especially with the lakes in Buffalo.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'm going to Calgary. So I go to Calgary, and I have a decent football career there and a whole bit, and I was able to feed our family, and we were living what I called a good life and enjoying the city and the people and the friends that we knew, of course. And so I was at probably a Kiwanis or whatever men's group at lunchtime, and someone said, "John, what made you come to Calgary?" And I said, "Really, it was what I just said about the mosquitoes and all that." And then I said, I said, being that I was an athlete and a jock, I said, it probably didn't occur to me that I probably would have been able to afford an air conditioned home in Buffalo. So, I always go back on that, and I think, my God, how you are imp- imprinted with your youth.
Yeah.
And the youth was god awful. And we had football practice in Pennsylvania, of course, and so hot, so humid. And our coach was of the old nature where we got a small, probably 2 ounce Dixie cup of lemonade if you had a good practice. And
Oh,
so when I look back on life and I think of all these things, and I look at this generally across the board in the world, everyday human beings who go to work deserve the best of life because they got up in the morning and they went to work and they're looking after their families. And I really have no faith in government because I think the government is just people who are working for their welfare. And what other welfares are they looking after but their own? So we, the people who pay the taxes, just like those people in government do, we can't afford to put our trust and all of our hopes on someone who's here today and gone tomorrow.
yeah.
And so when you look at life, and I think football, I had probably four head coaches in football. I had two teams. I had all these different situations. And the amazing thing is, when I look back, the very good people, I really like this coach, Bob Baker, because Bob Baker didn't care whether you won or lost. He cared, but it wasn't going to make him a different man as to whether or not you got Monday off or Friday off or the day after the game off. You got that day off, period, no matter what you did. So I look at all these things and I just feel like The important thing is just the humility of life, the humanity and the humility. I think that goes hand in hand, and I think that's kind of like what's wrong with our world because everybody's taught that a dollar is going to make you happy. For a minute, it will, but for a lifetime, you have to add up the cost, and maybe it won't be worth it. And I think for me, as I said, with the football didn't owe me anything, and I don't owe football anything today. And I look at all these things and on all the people and the good people that I know, I still know, which is great.
Well, and I really appreciate. I meant to comment earlier. Like Willie Burton was another name. Like anytime we got the ball as kids running with the ball, we were Willie Burton, right? And because he was a phenomenal running back, and I'm trying to remember. Did he end up in South Carolina at a university?
He went to North Carolina State.
Okay,
He was a Wolfpack guy, and he this is these are the kind of buddies that I have. Um, Rick Albos is not faring well, and and I think those are the things that when I look back on my football career, I know many people who played with injury. I played with lots of injuries because I only missed 2 games in 14 years, and I
oh,
wasn't 100% every time I played.
yeah,
If I were, I must have been a tin man or something. Eh? But you look at these things and you look at life, and I think that, and I tell this to people, the only regret in my life, the only regret I have is to know that God gave me strength to do all those things, and then you didn't believe He is who He is, and and that's my only regret is that I had to connect the fact that I was worthy of that, and I really, like I said, I really feel very very sad to know a good man like Rick is suffering for something that shouldn't have happened. But then again, good men die for those who aren't so good, eh?
yeah. Well, and that's one of the reasons we've come a long way in that whole era. Like my dad was a police officer. He probably worked the games that you were playing in, and they didn't deal with the stuff very well that they had to deal with. It was going to the bar and and having a drink. Where at Heroic Men, we're trying to build that brotherhood. So it's kind of like a peer support system. I was trained in peer support in the Calgary Police Service, and to have a healthy outlet that you can do. I was explaining to the class at the university earlier this week the need for that to because we're all going to have be kicked in life. We're all going to have hard days. We're all going to have. I'm sure you've had lots of painful days in your lifetime, like when your parents die and stuff like that. And those aren't just having a way to deal with it. I lost 4 boys that I worked with in youth at risk, and having a group of men uh, to reach out to who are going to pray for me and there to support me. And I know because I know I need to reach out. I can't carry this alone. And training men to learn how to walk with other men is what our whole hope is, uh, and encourage one another because I don't care who you are, how much money you have. Uh, Father Stan Fortuna has a rap song called "Everybody Gonna Suffer." Like it's it's true. We all are gonna have some suffering at some point, and it's what we do with it and how we walk with it, uh, and and God is there all the time waiting for us. So I have a couple of questions for you. So
Yeah.
what do the grandkids call you?
Papa.
Papa?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Papa. Yeah.
that's my name
I
too. And then the is there a meal that you prepare that brings the family together and they say, "Papa, make that for me."
no, I think I would their, their grandma does a great job. So I don't mess up her kitchen. No,
Okay.
quite honestly, I I have to say that when I went to university at 218 and I played at 245 for 14 years, and then I grew up a little bit after that, went up to about 260, and now I'm about midways, about 255 or so. And so I'm saying that I could feed myself, but not like my wife. And my grandkids when they come over, well, we've got two in town here. We've got Toronto and Vancouver, but we have two in town here in Kelowna, and the great granddaughter. And no, Nora, I don't have a I can I could throw chili or spaghetti, or I could do lots of things, but they're all to my taste. So when we're going to have all the family over, I help Nora to put things out. But yeah, we're very, very fortunate. We have such wonderful grandkids. I think anyone who has grandchildren know that theirs is the best. It's just like our moms. Our moms are the best. So and dads.
Yeah.
One of the things young men need to know, and my buddy. Who passed away here recently, he did very, very well in life. He did very well from a financial standpoint, and it's unfortunate that sometimes men get off to a bad start because it's kind of like, who's your leader, and is your leader willing to run with you in the trenches and climb to the top of the mountain with you? And I'd say this about my high school, or excuse me, my college coach, Frank Cush. I had never had to run Cush's Mountain at Arizona State, and that was up in a place called Tonazona. And it was my senior year, and Cush asked the team, "Hey, anybody not run the mountain?" And I didn't say a word because I never ran the mountain because I I I did my assignments, you might say. And so, anyways, everybody was looking at me, and I said, "Hey, coach," I said, "You know what? I've run that mountain." And he said, "Come on, Hilton." And so, anyways, everybody was cheering and laughing because I had to go. But we only went up about, I'm going to say, a halfway. And we sat there, and he said, which I'll always respect and be grateful for. He said, he says, when I met you and your mom and dad, and he said, we knew we had a good human being in you. And he says, all these years you've been here at school, 4 years, he says, you've never caused any trouble, and you've always been a good teammate, and you've been coachable. And he says, I'm really glad that we got you here. And I thought that was great. And he was willing to run the mountain though when I ran the mountain. And I like that. And I don't like people who can give directions, but they won't do it themselves. If I had if the only thing I couldn't do if I were a coach is go out and play, but I'd be there to try to assist in every way my players to know what they're going to deal with in life, and I can't tell them everything, but I may be able to give them the skills and the ability to see what's coming and plan for it before it hit them. And so I think what happens, well, regardless of what field of endeavor anybody's in, I believe there's just truths to life that you can't really succeed if you're not helping people to do better in their own lives, if you can't help them to be all they can be. And um and and that's sons and daughters and friends. And I always tell, we have a Helton family chat, and I tell them, you got to be absolutely clear on this. I'm not telling you who to be, I'm not telling you how to be, but I'm saying you better always monitor where your thoughts come from because that's where your actions are going to evolve. And you may not like if you listen to your thoughts because your actions are going to do you in. And I think if men cared enough about each other to say, hey, Helton, get over here. Look at you, you dimwit. What's all this about? What do you mean? Well, look at you. I mean, what do you think's going to happen if you do this or you do that? And if I say, so what? Then maybe that's what I'll learn. But I think people don't really care enough to say to somebody, that's not going to do you any good. And don't come to me whenever you hit rock bottom because you got the message early enough to know better. And maybe that's how harsh I am to myself with my sons or others. Absolutely, I'm always going to be there for them, but I don't think there's any excuse. That's the bad thing. And men do stupid things, but men aren't stupid
Yeah.
because I always say the pain in your heart will get you. You'll know you've done wrong when you do it. And if you continue to do it, probably going to kill you sooner than later. And I'm glad to be around as long as I've been.
And
So I
yeah,
just that's my daily drill is that this day will not repeat yesterday. This day I will rejoice and be glad in it, and I'll continue to grow, and I'll be. And then I know that I'll know my trust in God will carry me further than my actions and probably my deeds, except acknowledging that I know I've done things that I would have rather not. And you go from here.
amen to
And I
that.
think everybody has to go from here. So,
Yeah, today's a brand new day, and I just I think we could talk forever, and hopefully we could talk again in the future. I'm planning on being out in Kelowna for our men's conference out there this April. We have Father Larry Richards coming, fantastic priest. If you've never heard him, I think you'll love him because he's like the football coach in the and he just says it as it is, nice and straight, doesn't sugarcoat it, and then we're starting. Our bishop here challenged us to develop a March challenge for men. So I've got leaders from across North America, each doing a day for the March month men challenge, or we're renewing men is what the whole theme is. It's a heroic 30. It's going to be 31 days because March. And that's on our website as well, that we're hoping to create challenges between parishes and groups and dioceses, and just because sometimes men don't do things for themselves, but they definitely don't want their team to lose, so they'll get in there and take part, just so
right.
that their team doesn't lose to the neighboring parish. So
Well, I'll tell you, I appreciate this has been very, very good to talk with you. And Tony is a good man. I really appreciate him. I know that BJ said that you guys had you go down to the Splumbles from time to time, and Tony's been straight. I have to get in touch with him one day because I think I have some explaining to do. But the good thing is yeah, I appreciate what you're about, and so I thank you for be giving you my information and calling. And you won't see a halo over my head. If you do it, I better watch out. It could be lightning. But the good thing is I look at men and I don't judge. I don't judge because I always think if you're living when you learn, then you'll be good to go. so
there you
but don't be too late.
So the Gaelic term for whiskey is Ishkabaha, which means water of life. And I pray that you continue to lead souls to the true water of life. And I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you, John, for taking time out of your
Thank you
day.
very much. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye for now.
Thank you for joining us in the pub for this episode of A Dram with Friends. Go to heroicmen.ca to see what we do in this mission, and you can donate there to support stuff like a Dram with Friends. Please like and subscribe on all your YouTube and podcast platforms to help us grow our audience. Thank you. God bless and have a great day.